Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Around the World Today, Series 4, Episode 1. It's January 2021, and I'm your host, Terry D. So, hasn't it been a weird couple of weeks? We've seen, over the last few weeks, quite a few differences in life, haven't we? So, one moment we were getting used to, maybe we're going to see some hope at Christmas. Maybe we were going to, have that Christmas that we all wanted. But for those of you who listen to this podcast and follow news, that really didn't happen for a lot of people. And then we hope for New Year. By New Year, most of the country was back in the highest restriction. And I mean the whole UK. So we didn't get that. And now we're in January, and it just seems that we're in the same place where we left off this time, in March of last year. However, the arguments still come, and we still have a little bit of hope with the United States. Well, last Wednesday, for those of you, and I wanted to do a podcast on this, but then I didn't, and then I did, and then I didn't, so I decided to put it in with the whole It's January 2020 podcast. So last Wednesday the 6th, Thursday morning, early hours, if you're in the UK, there were riots, insurrection, incompetence, led by Donald J. Trump. Trump incited a riot at the Capitol building, an assault on democracy. For these people who follow the ideology and idolize President Donald J. Trump, I think I'm going to direct you to 1 Corinthians 10:23 to 11. Well, the whole of 1 Corinthians, especially the parts that state, do not idolize others. And there are also parts in 10:23 to 11 that say you have the freedom to think for yourself. You have the freedom to act for yourself. However, sometimes you have to choose to curve this freedom in the best interests of everyone else. Now, St. Paul it was like St. Paul was writing this for the average Donald Trump supporter who found it quite hilarious to storm a palace of democracy, because that's what these places are. They're palaces of democracy. It is your right as a human being, as a citizen of your country, for you to elect a member of your community to go to this palace of democracy, where violence isn't meant to happen, where guns do not need to be deployed, where people do not die. To me, it was like that passage was written. And at the time, I was writing an assignment on that passage and on that text. And I said to a priest friend that it's exactly like it was written for today. It really was. since then, Donald Trump has gone into hiding. There's been speculation about Article 25 of the Constitution that will remove him for being a bit crazy. And that's being nice about it. And I was thinking about this now on Saturday. We jumped a few days. On Saturday, I was thinking about this myself. I was like doing that same assignment, and I don't use my Twitter that much. My personal one. Or my Real Tario one, come to think about it. I really should. But I went onto Twitter and I looked and it came up, you get those follower things who you should follow and stuff. It came up Melania Trump, FLOTUS. And I thought to myself at that point, if any person was hoping for an Article 25 to remove him from office on the grounds of insanity, it would be her, right? Because theoretically, Melania could then claim power of attorney over Donald Trump and his assets and his business and him and, have all the money. You could then really contest his will and say he wasn't, a full deck there when he conceived the will. Yeah, but this kind of story of Melania wanting to divorce her husband or is only with her husband because he's the president of the United States. Well, the media, I think, have missed this one because, Article 25 opens up to the fact if he is not a full deck, or a sandwich short of a picnic, he would basically, to be president, this surely would open up to his personal life, his life as Donald Trump the citizen, because then you could get mental evaluations done. This would be an interesting thing. So, yeah, I was just thinking to this, and I did post it on the Around the World Today group. So if it is there and you've got thoughts on it, please do comment on Facebook. And fun. But since then, the riots, the FBI, I have to admit that Donald Trump did more in uniting the Capitol, right? Or Congress, than he's done all 4 years that he's kept them apart. The thing that I find funny about Trumpians' behaviour is he's also trying to leave America. The US Air Force had scheduled a 757, and the 757 aircraft is only flown for diplomatic missions or on government business. It's not a fighter craft or anything like this. And he scheduled a 757 to land at Turnberry, the golf course that he owns. Now, only members of the First Family or the government can use this aircraft. And there's no reason for it to be booking airspace into Scotland. So the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, say what you want for nationalists, but, on this case, I agree with her. She said he's not welcome, basically, because there's a pandemic. So that was quite fun. And that brings us to where we are now, the United Kingdom, and now pandemic. Oh, we'll talk about the riots. So there have been arrests in the riots, and they have been interesting, haven't they? Experts have said this is going to take time. It's quite funny because last night they were telling the people who really were out to cause this that they should hand themselves in. And it's 56 field officers of the FBI are currently investigating what went on from the Capital Riots. It's quite shocking. Do you know one person who stormed the Capitol building wore a shirt with the words Camp Auschwitz? I'm really sorry, But does this man not understand that American soldiers, along with British soldiers, Canadian, Australian, New Zealand, French, Dutch, need I go on, liberated camps like Auschwitz, gave their lives in some instances when they were liberating these camps. And that's before the account of the Jewish people, the gay people, the gypsies, the criminal, the mentally disabled, that gave their lives to some kind of neo-Nazi idea of what life should be. Some control that they know what God's plan was and they should correct God's plan. To me, wearing a t-shirt like Camp Auschwitz on to the Capitol building, a palace of justice, a palace of democracy. Law is formed in that building. People's lives are affected by what goes on in that building. By wearing this. This was a grave front to democracy. This was a grave front to humanity. And most of Trump's followers are Christians. So let's just say it was very unchristian of you. Considering Jesus Christ himself was Jewish. He was and did enter the synagogue. Considering we're told to live among one another without actually saying that we're different, putting our personal beliefs aside when we come together, you know, I find it quite appalling that I've read this. By the way, the person's name... Oh no, we don't believe in name and shaming because we may get sued. There are other ways you can find the name and shaming out. I've seen a very big thing on Instagram. I saw US retired colonels of the Air Force being arrested. There were politicians being arrested. What makes these people think that it was okay to go and storm the Capitol building? In the United Kingdom, we have the Parliament, as you know. And we've had this whole thing, Brexit, as you know. Now, we also had protests, as you know, because we've talked about them. The thing is, the protests we had, and people were calling this an affront to democracy, you know, Brexit and the stuff that was going on. No matter what side you were on, it was an affront to democracy. The problem we had, we didn't even have riots this big. No one even dared try and get into Parliament. Because British people seem to understand that we live in a parliamentary democracy and that our Parliament is sovereign. In America, the problem is you live in a system that's like 50% a parliamentary democracy, 50% a autocracy done by executive power and fiat. Well, in the UK, yeah, we have the Queen and she theoretically wields that executive power and fiat, but she doesn't. She really rarely uses it. I sometimes wonder if it is better for the United States after this president, Biden, to appoint a king or a queen. Maybe not Donald Trump. Maybe come back to the UK, have a Governor-General instead. Allow your Parliament to do it, and, we'll sort it out in the end. Elect your state governors, of course. You'll make them lieutenant governors then, or lieutenant governor-generals. They'll be lovely. They'll have a nice uniform, and they'll have an act, and they'll have military uniform, and we can get all of your ships pointed, and we can drop this USSS crap and put HMS, and stuff like this, and you can have the stamp and the Queen. We'll get rid of this dollar and we'll put the pound. But serious people, and I know that's never going to happen, but what I'm trying to say is we need some unity, and you're not getting it with Donald Trump. And most people, such as the Republicans, because now they're talking about impeaching him, and they've started voting, they've started the debates, and they're going to be voting, and the Republicans are turning on Donald Trump because they've woken up and they've smelt the coffee. They've seen how he's been since November. They've seen how he's been acting since November. He's been banned from Twitter, from Facebook, from YouTube. There are more banning hammers coming down on Donald Trump. Donald Trump effectively can now communicate to anyone without going to the media, who he's been slating since 2015, people. Because they ate him by all accounts. Or could it be that the media have actually been reporting what really has been going on, and everything Donald Trump has been saying is fake is actually what has happened? Now, this time next Wednesday, we'll have the inauguration of Joseph R. Biden. We're hoping to bring you a live stream of this. We're planning to, and do listen to that. We're going to move on now to COVID-19 in the United Kingdom and the response by the Boris Johnson government and the Welsh government, led by Mark Drakeford, the Northern Irish government, led by the First Minister and Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland. And we're not going to mention the names because I only know one of them. And we're going to look at Scotland, led by First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. I was thinking of the name that I call her. And basically their response. Yeah, it's quite thing, isn't it? A couple of weeks ago. So Wales has been in a lockdown since the 20th of December. Some of you may have remembered I hadn't finished my Christmas shopping. I don't have an all button, but I do have a clap. Well, the side effects aren't working. Oh, God, I know.
Click, listen, enjoy.
Sorry, people, I just needed a sec. But yes, we went into a lockdown here in Wales in 20th of December. It took until when Boris made his announcement for people to understand that Wales is in a lockdown. That Wales has been in a lockdown since December. It wasn't until last week that people actually got that Wales is in a lockdown. That Wales is closed. What's also funny, in England this week, they closed schools last week as well in England. 24 hours before the Prime Minister was telling everyone they're going to be in school. And as you know, free school meals. This government in the United Kingdom hates free school meals. Well, it's quite bad. Do you know what I mean? It really is. So the government have been paying for free school meals for children when they've been off. And this was given to a company. So the company sent out some meals this week. End of last week, beginning of this week, over the weekend. And basically, I think I'm going to play you what ITV has said and their response, and I'll be back just after this.
Correspondent Libby Vina, another lockdown where schools are closed to most pupils and the government seems to be caught out once again on free school meal provision for those at home.
Yes, well, the government is saying this isn't a U-turn. I think it's more like damage limitation. The fact is that no one knew until the very last minute as to whether schools were going to open this term or not. In fact, some went back on January the 4th and then were told to close in the evening. It's perhaps not surprising that they didn't have a voucher scheme in place. The government says that vouchers are going to be rolled out nationally next week, but the Prime Minister you saw there criticising the food that was sent out by a company in a scheme that is essentially signed off by the Department for Education. The Education Secretary himself also said earlier that he thought what was sent out was disgusting, but the fact is he signed off on that scheme. And some school children I've just been speaking to, they're pretty appalled by the images, like the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State, but they say, why on earth didn't they check what this scheme was sending out to families with children who needed free school meals? And they're really not very impressed, these youngsters that I spoke to, that the government is trying to shift the blame purely onto the company that was sending out these meals. I think in the longer term, what most worries them, though, is the lack of clarity as to when schools will go back and what is happening in terms of assessing their grades for when they either leave school or move on to the sixth form. They're still very unclear as to what is actually going on.
Yeah, still some big questions on issues like that. Libby Vina, thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you, ITV News. So basically, there's been uproar. Is anyone surprised that the Conservative government, where the vast majority of government ministers went to private education, don't actually get the fact that free school meals, you closed the schools because you gave in to pressure. You didn't have a contingency plan for if you were going to close the schools, because you could have had to close schools at any time. So you would have thought there would have been some kind of contingency plan in the works. Remember in March of last year. The same with education, with educating online. What have you been doing? Surely if it worked in the first lockdown, you put it into the third lock, and it worked in the second lockdown, you put it in the third lockdown. Right? By now, we're in the third lockdown. We should know how to lock down. We should know how to open up. There should be a clear plan and strategy. But there isn't, because the Prime Minister has been out breaking more of his own rules. His government have been telling people to stay local. Now, listeners, my dear friends, is staying local, going 7 miles away from where you are living to ride a bike? You have to ask yourself, when two people went for a 20-minute drive, or, I mean, you know, it could even be a 2-minute drive, but a drive around the corner from their house, and they were given a £200 fine. The Prime Minister was travelling with 4 policemen. Not one of them tried to give him a fine. There is one rule for them and one rule for us. Like with Donald Trump, if you look in America and if you look at Boris Johnson and the populist leader, the problem you have is that they blame other people when everything goes tits up. When everything goes tits up, everyone is attacking them. They are being attacked. You know, so everyone is out to get them. Look at Trump. He lost the election. The American people effectively fired the President of the United States. They were not giving him a second term. At the end of the day, if you're an incumbent president, it is more easier to get elected for a second term than it was for the first term. Donald Trump screwed up. But Donald Trump, unlike other presidents who have only ever won one term, didn't come out and succeed and say, and concede the election. Donald Trump still has not conceded the election. However, he does know this time next week he's gone. But Donald Trump instead blamed everyone else. The Democrats, they stole the election. And he even went on to blame the voting machines. Even Hugo Chavez, who has been dead since 2013. How can someone... I believe in life after death. Of course I do. As a committed Christian, a committed follower of Christ. But, I believe in eternal life. I don't believe in coming back as a voting machine. Let alone, how did Hugo Chavez in 2013, when he died, knew that Donald Trump was going to be running for president in 2020? Let alone that Donald Trump would still be alive. He was 70-odd years, he was quite old in 2013. So, yeah, it's quite shocking. And then we had these riots. But if you look at the statement that we've just listened to, the government are trying to blame, in the UK, the company that provided the food. But the government failed to actually put any contingencies in place. So to make sure that the supply of food is there, to make sure that what they're getting, what they could have actually done is give the contract out to a company that makes ready meals. Or how about one of the companies around the UK that make airline food? That have chefs in there. What the UK government could have done there is distributed, a lot of food across the UK and meals already made. These people have been furloughed by the government because airlines aren't flying that much anymore. There are kitchens not being used across the country. And the government could have acted better. Instead, they are now going to give vouchers. Now, I help out on a food, feeding homeless people and vulnerable people in my city. It's quite fun. I've been there today. I've had the last couple of weeks since Christmas a little different because we have to have people on the door for the service, and I enjoy that because I go to service myself anyway. But from what we've learned, people are grateful for what food you give them. Even when it's crap food or crap service, they are really grateful. They will not complain. So what gets me is that you see some of the comments on Facebook of people complaining about these, what their kids are getting. And I'm really going to say this. If I was one of those kids' parents, I would be kicking off myself as well. Because the food that they were given wasn't even adequate to feed them. You're meant to be supplying them a meal. That's what school dinners are, a meal for 5 days. And in some cases, these meals started to be rolled out this time last week. So in some days, you were doing it for 10 days. There wasn't even enough meal. By all accounts, they were given £30 per day for each student. And they only spent £5 and kept the profit. These companies should be named and shamed. If anything, they've stolen money from the UK government. So the UK government should send in the arm of the UK government called the police to investigate. And maybe use the other arm of governance in the United Kingdom called the judiciary and prosecute them. Do you know what I mean? They've stolen money from the Crown. They've stolen money from us, the taxpayer. Yes, I know I live in Wales and it's a devolved matter in our education department. And yes, Welsh companies that are providing food in the same circumstances to Welsh students are doing a better job. I saw photos of a place in Caerphilly that has been doing this, and what they're sending out is much better. There is a different meal every day for the student. There is quite a bit of veg and even a ready meal, a pizza, so a proper meal. What the child would have, nutrition and value. But once again, the UK government, when it came to England, didn't check it out. We have Brexit. Shelves are empty in Ireland. And well, shelves are empty at Co-op as well. In the UK, in Swansea. What's quite shocking, do you know what I mean? Well, yes, there is a lockdown and, supplies are taking a bit to come in, but... Hello. So, let's go back to Gavin Williams' statement. Isn't it good news about the vaccine as well? The vaccine itself, I think we might have Gavin Williams' statement. Oh, yes, we have. Gavin Williams was on Sky News this morning. I'm now playing it.
A new strain of coronavirus is in Wales and spreading
with an ad.
quickly. It's putting people at risk of serious illness and our NHS under great pressure. So we must all stay at home again.
See.
When it's essential to go out, remember to wash your hands, cover your face and keep your distance. Vaccines give us all real hope for a better future. But for now, we must stay home to save lives and keep Wales safe.
Also, England has got...
I was absolutely disgusted. As a dad myself, I just sort of thought, how picture I was
Okay, sorry.
absolutely...
Gavin Williams, would you please be quiet? Thank you. Now, we will now play you what Minister Williams of the Health of... Actually, I won't give the Prime Minister any ideas. This man did used to be Defence Minister as well, didn't he? At one point. Yes, but I'll play you what you said.
That picture, I was absolutely disgusted. As a dad myself, I just sort of thought, how could a family in receipt of that really be expected to deliver, 5 nutritious meals as is required? It's just not acceptable. It's been made absolutely clear to Chartwells and to the whole sector that sort of behaviour is just not right. It will not be tolerated. We will not live with that, And it's so important. There are clear standards that are set there that they need to deliver against. And if they do not deliver against them, actions will have to be taken. Now, the Minister for Children met with Chartwells yesterday. Chartwells have made absolutely clear that this isn't acceptable and they've apologised for this. We'll support any school that needs to take action against any food contractor, and absolutely we will name and shame any of those as are not delivering against the standards.
Of course they're going to name and shame them. But at the end of the day, it's not only on Chartwell, it was on you, Gavin Williamson, as the Secretary of State for Education for England. The onus was on you to make sure that the children in receipt of free school meals, because they come from the vulnerable part of our society and our country, Their parents are already on benefits, the vast majority of them. Some of them come from one-parent families. Some of them have no parents and are in the foster system or are in the care system. Well, technically the same, but you know what I mean. Maybe, Mr. Williams, you should resign. Maybe, Mr. Johnson, you should resign. At the end of the day, those full meals were not nourishing. You used the fact that you are parents and you would never see your children go like this. But it was okay for fellow citizens of the United Kingdom's children, who you are the government of, to go like this, to have those non-nutritious meals, because Gavin Williamson's department couldn't be bothered to put something as simple as quality checking the contract in the contract, or something about random inspections in the contract. That's a very good procurement contract to the HM government, to the education department. Meanwhile, our children haven't got a nutritious meal. Our children aren't in school. There are children who cannot afford an iPad or a laptop. And I say their parents can't afford to buy them one, so they don't have one. So their education has suffered drastically. There are children out there with learning disabilities who are not getting the support they need, who are probably falling through the gaps. There are university students out there paying £9,500 a year tuition fees for an experience that I would say isn't even worth £170. There are students who have just paid rent for this term who may not get to live in the place that they've paid rent. Mr. Williamson, son, I appeal to you, like the vast majority of the country, to do the right thing, to fall on your sword and resign. Mr. Johnson, your handling of the pandemic, your handling of the last year has been something besides comical, to say the least, to say the worst. It has been diabolical. You have taken a diabolical liberty on the United Kingdom. It has been a catastrophe of a year. And there's only so much of blaming a pandemic you can do. How about we blame the leadership too? At the end of the day, the United Kingdom is an island. You were very slow each time at locking down. I mentioned when we moved on to this segment about Wales being in a lockdown from the 20th. It took Boris Johnson and Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland 2 weeks from when Wales and Northern Ireland went into their lockdowns. Maybe if they had went into their lockdowns, we would have had a decrease 2 weeks ago, or even a week ago, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, you need to take your foot off the brake and put it on the gas. As I've also calling for other people to resign, maybe we should ask for Donald Trump to resign. But as we only have 6 days, 7 days, and 30 minutes of Donald Trump's presidency left, I don't think there's point of him resigning. And that's where we found ourselves, in a coronavirus lockdown if you're in the United Kingdom. Full lockdown. That so many people are saying that we're not taking serious, but people are taking it serious. We're going to be talking again on the World Disability about face masks again, and shops, because they've changed their rulings and now they're getting very snippy about it. But we'll be talking about that this week. I'm going to thank you for tuning in, and I will speak to you very, very soon. And I hope you have a great day. Remember to check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/RealTario. If you can go to the groups, you can go to the Around the World group for that. Or you can check out our website, www.realtario.com. And we hope you have a pleasant, well, I hope you have a pleasant day. I hope whenever you're listening to this that maybe it's in a year or two. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe in about 20 minutes time after this has been uploaded. But whenever you're listening to this, peace and love will be with you. And have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This week's episode has come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.